Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.
Alhamdulillah, praise be to God. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. I bear witness there is no other God but God, and He has no partners. Assalamu alaikum. So, a couple of things recently, happened. We had a series of events that just recently transpired in our group Quran studies, and so that led me to a series of thoughts about God's system and the admissions test, and why things happen the way they happen, when we go through things. And so I pondered about it, and even though I don't have a very organized set of things that I want to present, they're just more like ideas that I put together that I wanted to share today. So so the first thing I wanted to talk about was the importance of remembering God, right? So we understand that we will not be able to make it in the hereafter if God is not our God most of the day. And so it is important that as we go throughout our day, we remember that God is running everything, and that God is on our mind most of the day, and we have all the guidelines and all the recommendations that we need to make it happen. Obviously, that sounds like a daunting task at first, to make sure that you can make God your God at least 51% of your day just to make it, right? And I mean, that's 51% even sounds a lot, but that's just to make it, that's just what we have to have, right? But then obviously, if we want to get higher ranks, we have to strive harder. But just the 51%, but God makes it easy for us, right? And we have things like, utterances that we know, like saying mashallah, on our things that we love, or people. And then, you have the blessings that you say mashallah on, things like that. You say inshallah before you do something, right? But then you also say Bismillah before you, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, La ilaha illallah, before you start your day. When you start your car, before you do anything, for any occasion, we should look for excuses to remember God, right? We have to understand, like, for example, the thing about the car, right? Why does the messenger say of the covenant, when he said, when you start your car, you say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, La ilaha illallah? Because there's no direct verse in the Quran that says you should do that, right? There's a verse that says that you should say, glory be to the one who subdued this for us. We could not have controlled it by ourselves. Subhanallazi sakhkhara lana hadha wa ma kunna lahu muqrinin wa inna ila rabbina lamunqalibun. But there's no verse that says you should say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, La ilaha illallah, when you start your car, right? But the messenger says that because we have to remember God most of the day. And so before you do anything, for any occasion, we're looking for excuses to remember God, right? And even that, something as small as that is something that, we feel that makes religion difficult for us, then, good luck, because, this is how we were. Like, we thought that, it's going to be easy. We're just going to worship God alone, and we're all going to make it. Even people like Hitler and Pharaoh and all the serial killers and all these people with the worst souls also thought the same thing, right? But the thing is, it's not an easy task. It's not a walk in the park, so yes, we have to toughen ourselves. It's not going to be easy, and also people who are not prepared for that sort of a commitment, simply don't make it. It's not something that we just have read. It's something that we see. Those people always turn out to be hypocrites, because there is lack of action. There's lack of motivation because there's lack of belief, right? And it shows the lack of belief and the doubts in the fact that, we're finding it difficult. We're finding it hard. I mean, God says, about the hypocrites, when they get up for the prayer, they get up lazily, also, right? It's a chore for them. Like, it's such a hardship. I have to do this, When they give to charity, God says, they do so grudgingly, right? And so, like, it is a big deal for them, like, so hard for them to take some charity out, only like even 2.5%. That's like a lot, right? Which shouldn't be, obviously. So these types of things, so everything is difficult for them. They do things, even in the cause of God, if they have to do something, they do it with so much fuss that they make about it, that it just repulses other people from the path of God, and they do it to show off, right? This is what God says about the hypocrites. So obviously, for the believers, we have to be in a mindset, in order for us to be believers, we have to be in a mindset that we do so cheerfully. When you get up for the prayer, you do so cheerfully. When you give to charity, you do so cheerfully. Even during the bad times, you give to charity, you do so cheerfully, not like, oh, it's a big burden, like I have to do this, And, if you have to remember God, you do it. That every time I remember God, that's an opportunity that helps me. If I have to mention God on any occasion or think about Him on any occasion, that's a way for me to grow my soul. That's the roadmap for me to getting where I want to be with the 51% or more, right? And so it is important that we remember that as much as possible. Obviously, we're humans, we're weak. We have our distractions, we have Satan, we have our own jinn companion, and so it is not easy. We have to put ourselves in the mindset of doing that. We have to get in the habit of doing that when we wake up, doing that when we start our car, doing that when we do anything, say Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, remembering God, right? Because anything you're doing, what is wrong with saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim before you're doing anything? You're just remembering God, asking Him to help you, right? That's just a way of doing that. And what better statement than saying Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim? I mean, look at it's fully mathematically coded, the most strongest statement that's mathematically coded. I mean, there's a whole book about just Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim and its mathematical composition. It's so amazing. It has so many mathematical facts. It's just truly awesome, right? So no believer will find it difficult or a chore to do that, right? Obviously, when we forget, we make mistakes. God is forgiving, most merciful, right? But we have to make the effort. This is just a way for us to make it, right? And God is helping us. This is so, for people to think that, submission is a religion where you just go and, do your 5 prayers, maybe, grudgingly do your charity and just go about your day. I mean, obviously that's not the case, right? I mean, these are people who dedicate their lives, God says, to serving God. So their day and night is devoted to God alone. So they're going to commemorate God. They're going to worship God. They're going to meditate, when they're driving, when they're doing stuff. They're going to do all these things as much as possible, as much as humanly possible. They'll do these things because they know what's at stake, right? And they have a roadmap that they need to follow. They have a goal in front of them, which is an awesome goal for all of us. And on the contrary, I mean, on the other end of the spectrum, if you don't make it, you have the worst of the worst retribution you can ever imagine. So there's no other option but to run towards God, right? To do as much as possible as we can to remember Him, and not look at it as a chore or something. Look at it as a gift, as an opportunity to strive, as things that we can do to grow our souls exponentially. And those are the real people that will have the heavy souls, right? I mean, we understand that, nothing in this world comes without a price or without some effort. If you need something in life, you have to make a lot of effort, right? And for people to think that they can just enter paradise without any effort, I mean, that wouldn't make any sense. So it's very important to remember that being a submitter, yes, it's true that becoming a submitter is a great blessing from God. It's It's a huge, huge blessing from God, but that's just the beginning of the journey, right? Being a submitter, staying a submitter, and becoming a believer is a process that requires a lot of effort, on our part. And, God's, role is to help us get to the point of, showing us the book, right? Showing us the path, right? Then we have to follow that path. We have to work hard on our souls to follow that path and ask God to help us throughout. And obviously, if we're not obeying God, if we're not regarding what God is telling us by remembering Him, we're not simply going to make it to wishful thinking, right? So, may God allow us to work on ourselves and look at it from a perspective of opportunity as a blessing, as a gift, so we can reach our goals and growing our souls. As we know that when Solomon missed his afternoon prayer, he said that I enjoyed my horses more than worshiping God. So that shows us that for a believer, you should find it the most enjoyable thing, the most satisfying thing for your soul, right? But if not the most satisfying thing, it should at least be satisfying and enjoying to some extent, right? But to the point that it becomes an effort and a chore, as a hardship, that is something that is requires some serious attention and soul searching, right? So may God allow us to grow our souls and be as close to Him as possible, because our souls are part of God. Our souls need that nourishment, and the more we get that nourishment, the happier we become, the stronger we become, right? So nobody would not want to remember God. People would not look for excuses to not remember God. Like we were having the discussion when someone said, yes, I'm gonna mention God's name when I eat, but not when I drink. So we're looking for excuses to not remember God, looking for loopholes. Okay, so let me try to find ways in which I don't remember God. Okay, so it says eat, so I'm gonna drink then and not remember God, so hey, I made it easy for me. We're looking for shortcuts, just even when it comes to something as critical as our souls, right? So may God allow us to reflect on it and grow our souls. Tubu ilallah. Alhamdulillah. Praise be to God. Wa ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah. And I bear witness there is no other God but God, and He has no partners. Right? So along the same lines, as we were talking about submission being not a walk in the park, and the fact that not everyone who gets on the path of submission and wants to become a submitter is actually going to be a submitter and is actually going to turn into a believer who's going to go to heaven, right? I mean, it's a stark reality, people, because people have to be tested, right? When you say that you're going to worship God under all circumstances, your statement, your belief is going to be put to the test. And this is God's unchangeable system, right? And so what does that mean, right? That whole time of your admission test is really all the hardship and the hardness of being a submitter. The whole thing about, God, when God says, we made the human being to work hard to redeem himself, right? That is the whole process of going to the redemption, right? That is the process that is there for us to help us with our schooling, right? As we're going through these tests, we're learning a lot. We're learning and we're fixing things, as we're going through them. And that takes time, right? It takes time. I mean, we had a whole lifetime of being ignorant and whole lifetime of reinforcing bad habits, reinforcing, bad ideas, listening to Satan, and, constant chain of negative thinking in our brains. So all these things have to be fixed. We have to, in a way, sort of rewire ourselves, our brains, our thoughts, our actions, everything. So it's going to take time, right? And to get to the point where we can pass our test, it is a process, right? And so along the same lines, when people just want it to be easy, there was this audio where the messenger was talking about the admissions test usually lasting 5 years, all right? But he said it could take you less time if you're good, but he says usually within the first 5 years. So that means when he says usually, that means that there are cases where it's not going to be 5 years, right? And there was a debate over that with some individuals and or hypocrites, because they said that it cannot be more than 5 years because he says it could be less. But obviously from the English standpoint, it doesn't make any sense, because it says usually within the first 5 years means it could be after, right? And so that shows also that, people are deterred from the path, and then deterred by seeing that there's effort involved. They don't like the idea that they have to work hard to be tested. It could, like the possibility of the admission test being taking more than 5 years, right? I mean, you need a house, you need to apply for a loan, the term is at least 20 years where you have to keep making payments, like normally speaking, right? And people have no problem doing that. Nobody says, oh, I'm not going to buy a house. I'm going to have to make payments for 20 years. Nobody says that. People happily go and buy it, everybody buys cars. I mean, go for 5-year loan, right? It's typical. But the thing is that when you feel that, something is worth it, you don't mind if it takes 5 years or even 10 years, right? And there was this relentless discussion, and at the end of the discussion, they still didn't accept that it could take more than 5 years, right? And but I was, as I was preparing for my sermon, I was looking through some of the other studies also. I mean, for me, it was clear that it could take longer. I personally, looking at things that I went through in my life as a submitter from the time I became a submitter, I know that I felt that my admissions test was longer than 5 years. So, and when the messenger says usually, I understand that there's exceptions, right? But when you hear the messenger say something directly, that definitely reassures your heart. And as I was preparing for the sermon, I was going through the audios, and some of the recent ones I went through. So this was in Surah 75, actually. It's not Surah 75, audio number 75 in the Quran study, and he's actually talking about that. So this is, God willing, I'm going to play it. This is going to be from number 75. I'm going to play around the 1 minute and 5 seconds mark, or 1 minute mark. Yeah. Sorry, 1 hour. Sorry, 1 hour and 5 minute mark. Sorry. Yeah.
Beautiful gem, and that's what will come out after polishing. You know how polishing goes. They take a piece of rock, they put it in polishing machine, very noisy, chipping off pieces. But then what comes out is a beautiful gem. And that's what will come out after you go through the polishing process. Polishing is not easy. So what I'm saying is that there is a final test. Also, if you look at Surah 55, verse 3 and 4, Verse is 4 and 5. Okay. Page 401. Page 401. Verse 2. Let's put verse 2 at the end of it. Says, whoever observes righteousness toward God, he will create an exit for him, an exit of every cause, and provide for him whence he never expected. When you observe God, you sacrifice a job or a source of income, strictly for the sake of God. He will provide for you whence you never expect. And remember to do. Surah 401. The end of verse 2. This is the verse I wanted to remember. Whoever observes righteousness towards God, he will create an exit for him and provide for him whence he never expects. Anyone who trusts in God, God will supply him. God always carries out his decisions. You have come to the conclusion that God is the king, the absolute ruler of the universe, and you will carry out his promises and his decisions. You just have to believe it. You must have absolute confidence in it.
Okay, so actually,
tomorrow there's the mandatory law, the insurance law. And we have
2 minutes and 44 seconds. So there's this part where he talks about, right, the polishing, and then the part I wanted to also play was at 3 minutes and 40 seconds. So I'll play it from here.
God promises those among you who believe and work righteousness that he would make them kings on earth, as he did for those before them, and that he would establish for them the religion that he sought for them, and that he would substitute security in place of their fear. All this because they worship me alone, without idolizing anything besides me. If anyone disbelieves after this, then these are the wicked. But come and sit next to daddy. Sometimes sit next to mommy. Then we have no noise. And the real screen for all that. See, this promise is true. Now, do you remember Job? Job had lots of hardships. But once he passed the test, he recovered, his health recovered, he recovered his family and even twice as much. He recovered his wealth twice as much. So he was under the test for as long as he needed to be tested to prove himself. And the same is true with that. Also, we must think of adversity as a cleansing and polishing process. When you join the oneness of God alone, you expect some trouble at the beginning. Because you're cleansing all the past sins, all the past errors. And this can be cleansed only by paying for them. In this world. So all the adversity that you have at the beginning, to come join this part, you're going to have 5 or 10 years of adversity.
5 or 10 years.
Polishing, you know how polishing goes. You take a piece of rock, you put it in a polishing machine, very noisy, chipping off pieces, but then what comes out is a beautiful gem.
Inshallah. So you can see here, like, he's talking about the admissions test, he's talking about the adversity during the admissions test, he's giving an example of Job, and he says that after it, he was given twice as much, and he says the process, it could take 5 or 10 years. And then he says later on, it could be a series of struggles, it's not easy, so people have to be prepared for this. And he says you're tested as long as you need to be tested, and he says after that, there's nothing but, perfect happiness, right? So once, it also shows like, and once that we pass, then there's no need for us to go to other tests. There's no need, then, there's perfect happiness after that. Once you go through this adversity, this process, after that, you're a proven worshiper of God alone. You're polished, right? After that, okay, you still may have small faults here and there where you may need purification, and step in and out of God's kingdom as so you can fix those things, right? But that purification continues. But as far as the test goes, the admissions test goes, he says 5 or even 10 years even, So when he says in the other audio, it usually takes 5 years. That's like average, right? 5 years or less, like average. But it could take 5 years, it could take 10 years, and we can see that, it just depends on the information that God has about you. God knows that, there's probably no need for you to be tested. You're good. He said that you could pass it in a month, right? But, we see that, for example, Job's test, he was, it didn't take just a month, right? It's a long he went through a longer test. Now, does that necessarily mean he wasn't good enough? No, but it just was a test that God has put for him based on various other factors as well. And, so it's not just that, if your test is longer, it means that you're bad. Right? That's not necessarily, I don't believe so. And so, again, this shows that, there's people that, will pass the test. And, but the thing is, what it shows to us that, also that we need to have patience, right? As we go through these tests, what you need is a lot of patience. Like when you go, what is it that we need? Number one thing we need when we go through adversity, we need patience, right? When we don't have patience, what do? We object, we complain, and, we, turn an about face, we fail our tests, so, and we can see there's several examples, for that, several verses in the Quran. There's, 16:127. It says, "You shall resort to patience, and your patience is attainable, only with God's help. Do not grieve over them, and do not be annoyed by their schemes." So we can see that, this is obviously also, some of the things that, believers will go through. They will go through, persecution also as part of, the test. They'll go through, a lot of things. They'll go through insults, name calling, so many things, right? The persecution part, still, is a difficult thing, but God says that, this is something that is attainable, but only by God's help. So we have to implore God, to give us patience. And this verse 46:35 is, talking about God's messenger of the covenant. So therefore be patient like the messengers before you, who possess strength and resorted to patience. Do not be in a hurry to see the retribution that will inevitably come to them. The day they see it, it will seem as if they lasted 1 hour of the day. This is a proclamation. Is it not the wicked who are consistently annihilated, right? And we know from the footnote, this is referring to God's messenger of the covenant. So even with the messengers, they have to resort to patience. They possess strength, and they resort to patience. We're talking about messengers like, David, for example, who had so much strength, and he resorted to patience. And then, also, as we go through our tasks, and, go through our day-to-day lives, we'll come across many situations where our patience will be tested with, people, like, for example, not just on religious things, but on other things as well, right? And so that's why God says, resorting to, patience and forgiveness reflects a true strength of character. So if you want to be a strong person, a person of character, you have to remember to be patient, A lot of times people may look at someone who's patient, and they may not respond as aggressively towards a situation, and they may think that the person is weak because they didn't, And that's a mistake and ignorance on the part of the person who thinks that. But, a person who is wise and intelligent and has experienced the world even from a worldly perspective would know that, taking patience, having patience, is something that doesn't come easy. It takes a stronger person, to be patient than a person who just, gets angry all of a sudden and loses his temper. There's nothing glorious about, someone who doesn't have patience. And so, there's a lot of wisdom behind everything that, as we know, from experience, that, this is something that, God encourages us to have, but these are qualities that God instills in the believers, just by virtue of having them grow their souls. If your soul is strong, you're able to carry out these tasks because your soul is strong, but your soul is weak. You're not going to be able to do these things, right? So among other things that, we are tested, we are tested with our patience. Many things will happen in our lives where we will just lose our patience, circumstances that we want to turn out our way. We want something, but we don't know it's not the right time, but we are impatient. We ask for those things. But God knows what the right time is, and God knows that if it's patience that we need to work on, then all your tests are going to be revolving around patience, right? Until you pass those tests. And, so may God allow us to be patient, because just the whole process that we came in this world, and we have to be tested, and then pass the test, and then finally, God willing, get redeemed. That whole process takes some time, right? But we see it. That's how we see it. We see it as something that's taking a long time, but in reality, as God sees it, it's a very short amount of time, and we'll know on the day of judgment how short that time was, but the tests, these sacrifices, these struggles that we go through, we know that these struggles are not something that in vain. The more, God says, with pain there is gain. So the more pain it is, the harder it is. It's not a chore. It's not hardship. The harder it is for you, it's the more it is for your soul, right? The more you work, the more you grow. So may God allow us to always remember that, to apply it in our lives. With this, let's pray. Akim as-salam.